recording. And let's open up. Each time I add a little bit to the your sources. So at the end, I'll give you everything that I added. So let's go back to the Mishnah, which we were doing. Oh, it's actually here.
So you'll share the document that
you... Yeah, at the end, when I go through everything.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. So I keep adding a little bit here and there. Okay, so last time we were reading Mishnah. It's called the Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot. We're reading from chapter 1 and chapter 4. I would like to just do a few more from chapter 4. It's chapter 4, Mishnah 3. So if somebody could read one moment, this one, make it a little bit bigger. So here it says, hey. Oh, can you see it? Oh, wait, maybe you can't see it. Hold on. I didn't do share. Okay, do you see Mishnah 3 here? El obișnuia să spună.
El obișnuia să spună, de asemenea, să nu disprețuiești niciun om și să nu ne socotești niciun lucru. Căci nu există om care să nu aibă vremea lui și lucru care să nu aibă locul său. Shall I continue?
Okay. No, that's enough. I'll go back to the English because I don't really understand what it said. So,
just a minute, since we are
he
here.
also said, here.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to discuss something before we pass. It was from the first time we read it. That part with envy, lust, and honor. We translated it in Romanian with invidia, pofta și onoare. But you know, we say honor, it's onoare, but in Romanian, onoare, it has positive connotations somehow, and here it doesn't. Right. And I think it would be better mândrie, like in pride or something, or onoruri, să primești onoruri, because it's, I guess it's something that should be negative.
Yes. When you do something honorable, that's good. When you look to receive honor, that's considered negative.
Yeah, that's the difference. And if you say onoare sorry, my dog is barking and it's terribly annoying.
So it's because he wants to join the class. I understand.
Yeah, I guess so. He's got a lot of to say sometimes, and in mostly in most inappropriate times. Okay. When you say onoare, just onoare, it's hard to understand the negative connotation in it. That's what I was saying.
And how do you say then, what other word would you use?
Mândrie, invidia, pofta și mândria duc, îndepărtează omul de lume.
Mândria?
I should say as a...
Okay.
As you know, I have a literary part, and I pay very much attention at words because
right, you're right.
You can misunderstand and
that's right. You're right.
Misinterpret.
Okay, that's a good thing.
The ego, or the synonym is the ego. No, we condemn the church. The church condemns the ego as the first sin of all.
Really?
The pride.
Pride. Well, we'll see. Actually, here I didn't write it down, but also in Pirkei Avot, there's a saying that says a person should be very humble. Because in the end of every person is the worms and the maggots. So a person should be humble. But on the other hand, and the Hasidic movement within Judaism took that to an extreme and said that a person has to try to nullify their ego. I mean, took it to a great extreme. But you have other approaches also say that you have to develop, though, pride in the fact that you believe in things that are honorable in a positive way. So that's something to take pride in. So it's not good to have, you know, if you have absolutely no ego, then you don't even stand up for things that you have to stand up for. That's also one of the problems. So there has to be a certain balance in this equation, but the majority should be humility and a little bit so, to be able to stand up for things that are important. Okay, So he used to say, this is a saying, I think, of, let's see, who do we say before? I think it was Ben Azai before this. Zoma, Shimon ben Zoma. He used to say, do not scorn any man. Do not discount anything. For there is no man, meaning no person. Each means a person here. There's no person who does not have their hour. And there is no thing that does not have its place. Okay, the simple meaning is, sometimes we say, what do I need that person for? He's not going to help me in life. And then something happens and next week he's the mayor. Like, you never really know. We bump into people, we get the wrong ideas because we have a lot of preconceived ideas of who people are and what their value is. So never think that everybody has their hour, because for everybody, there's a reason why they're in this world. So it's also something for yourself. People sometimes think, well, what am I here for? I mean, everybody's here for a purpose. So the fact that you don't know the purpose doesn't mean that there isn't one. And it's also real, and you have to also be a little bit flexible, because sometimes if you think that the purpose is A, you might miss B when it actually happens. I'll give an example, but the example is not an exact example, it's a metaphor. When I was in 6th grade in elementary school, so there was a sports day at the school. And I like high jumping. High jumping? You have high jumping and you have broad jumping. So I liked high jumping, but I was good at broad jumping. I was only 12 years old. So we had this between two schools, and they said, at least do once the broad jumping before you do the high jumping. So I did once, I did the broad jumping, and I went to the high jumping, and I tried once, tried 2 times, tried 3 times, and I got nowhere. So the sports day was over, and I got a bronze medal in the broad jumping, which I didn't even pay attention to, but the high jumping, I got nothing. So sometimes we're so, interested in something that we miss the other thing because, so that happens too. You have a passion for one thing, you don't know the other thing. It's like, you can have a person, they have a passion for singing, but they don't have a good voice. But they're always the one who's taking the microphone at the karaoke. So they're the first ones there to take the microphone at the karaoke. So everybody's got to listen to them. But you could be that person, maybe they write poetry, but they don't like writing poetry. They like singing, okay? So sometimes you have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. It's okay to do things that you're not good at too, but you also don't miss the fact that you might be good at something that you didn't think you were good at. So everybody has their hour, and everything has its place. Everything in the world also has a place in the puzzle. You just have to figure out what the place is. Now, there's a second side, in my opinion, to this mishna, to this statement. If you notice, human beings relate to time, and objects relate to space. Because, of course, as Kant taught us, only human beings have an understanding of time. So objects live in time, but they're not aware of time. Animals seem to be aware of the fact that they're alive, but it's not clear if they're aware of time the way we are. I'm sure they're aware of the fact that it was, dark, and then it's the morning and it's light, but they don't have an intellectual understanding of time as something where you can plan out, like what to do next week. They're not as sophisticated as we are. So that time is a very big factor for us, but not so much to others. And that's the reason why we wear a watch. Because time is the way that we shape our lives. So human beings really live in time. Other things, not so much. They might be under time, but they're not aware of it. So, that's just something, it's like the famous statement somebody once said, if a tree falls in the forest and there was nobody there to hear the tree falling, So did it make a noise? Because there was nobody to hear the noise. So did it actually make a noise? A physicist would say it made the possibility of a noise. So if somebody with an ear was there, they would have heard it. But if nobody was there with an ear, neither man nor animal, nobody would have heard it. And I guess in a sense, it didn't make a noise then. Right? Because you need an ear to hear a noise for a noise to be something real. Anyhow, so what I'm saying is then that human beings are aware of time. Time is a very important part of our lives. But other things on the planet are not aware of time. That already puts the human being into a different category. That's why we have phones that the animals don't even know what the point is. I mean, they're tasty, you can bite them, like dogs like biting. Right? So, but they don't really know what the point is. They don't even know what the computer is, right? So your dog wouldn't understand why you're looking into a screen all the time when there's good food in the kitchen. So, what's the point? So we can live in a virtual world, which we created within our intellect, and it's totally different than the natural world around us. It's made out of ingredients from the natural world, but it's absolutely different from the point of view of the rest of nature. Trees, the plants, the minerals, the animals have no idea what we're doing. So, but we do. So as humans, we live in a whole different world than the rest of what's on this planet, even though we're just a small part of the planet. We live a whole different world than our solar system, even though we're a very small part of our solar system. Are there other intellectual beings out there that are like us? I don't know. You know, there's a story, a joke that they say, but every joke has some meaning. This man is standing in Jerusalem on Jaffa Street, and all of a sudden, a flying saucer comes down right in the middle of the road. And everybody's scared and they run away. And so one brave man walks up and he walks right next to the aircraft, the round aircraft with the flying saucer. And then a window opens up and a ramp comes down. And then the door opens and then this being comes out and it has 3 eyes and 4 arms and 4 legs, and it's walking down the ramp. And it has this big, heavy metal thing on its head. So a man walks up and he says, "Excuse me, are you from Mars?" So the thing does Google Translate. It says, goes like this. It says, does everybody on Mars have 3 eyes? Oh, does everybody on Mars have 4 arms? Goes like this again. And everybody on Mars has 4 legs? Says, and everybody on Mars has a metal thing on their head? And says, no, only the Jews. Yeah. I've always said if you have intellectual life on other planets, somewhere out there in the Milky Way, it doesn't mean that they're not going to have the same problems that we do. You know, we like to romanticize and fantasize, oh, they're going to solve all our problems. They're going to be light years ahead of us. Hey, they probably have the same problems we do. So, and if they're intellectual, then they have political problems, and they probably have medical problems, and they probably have problems with their in-laws and their parents, because there's no reason to think differently, right? Yeah. I didn't hear what you said because you're on mute. So, but okay. Let's look at the next one. Okay, that was number 3. Number 12 is talking about education. We'll see this one too. Number 12. Hold on. How do I do this? Okay, number 12.
Rabbi Eliezer, fiul lui Shamua, spunea: demnitatea discipolului tău trebuie să fie pentru tine la fel de prețioasă precum propria ta demnitate. Demnitatea colegului tău, precum venerația față de mentorul tău, iar venerația față de mentorul tău, precum venerația față de rai.
Okay, let me go back. So this is so Eliezer, the son of Shammua, said, the dignity of your students should be as precious to you as your own. In other words, it's very important to treat those who you are teaching with dignity. And don't think because you're so smart and you're teaching them, so you can be the big boss. And the dignity of your colleagues. You should be in awe of them just as you're in awe of your master, meaning the one who taught you. Meaning not only should you show them dignity, but you should also realize that you're learning from them too, and you should show a certain reverence even to your colleagues. And your master, meaning your teacher, you should show reverence just like you show God, because they are teaching you the words of the Torah. So this idea of appreciating, there's a famous Talmudic saying, that many things I learn from my teachers, and even more I learn from my colleagues, and even more I learn from my students. Because when you teach, you also learn. Because when you teach, you have to explain. And to explain something, you can only explain something well if you know it well. Sometimes you hear an idea, and you have, intuitively you understood it, but you didn't understand it enough to teach somebody else. To teach somebody else, you have to understand it very well. So that's why the teaching process is also a learning process. So going backwards, you have to give dignity to your students. You have to be a certain amount of reverence, even reverence to your colleagues, definitely to your teachers. And in your teachers, you have to realize that they're teaching you the Torah, that's what he's referring to, meaning the word of God. So you have to also feel this reverence of God when you are learning from them. Now, and if you don't think they're on that level, don't learn from them. It's just a waste of time. That's it says in the Psalms, and in David's Psalms, Mi Yamalel Gvurot Hashem, who is the one who will say the wonders of God, the strength of God? Yashmiya Kol Tilato, who will teach all of his glory. And the Talmud says, if the teacher doesn't know how to teach all of God's glory, shouldn't teach. So, leave it up to somebody else to waste people's time. Okay. Let's look at the next one. This one is unusual, number 19. Let me just find it. Hold on. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay. Samuel Chelmic.
Samuel cel mic spunea să nu te bucuri atunci când dușmanul tău cade. Când el se împiedică, inima ta să nu se umple de bucurie. Dumnezeu va vedea acest lucru, iar asta va fi neplăcut ochilor săi și el își va întoarce mânia sa de la el, asupra ta.
Okay, this is a very strange saying. There's a fellow whose name is Samuel the Small. And he says, when your enemy falls, do not be happy, right? I'll give you the exact quote. It says, when your enemy falls, do not be happy. Do not rejoice. When he stumbles, don't let your heart be glad, because God may see and it will be displeasing in his eyes. Oh no, not again, the same thing again. He will turn his wrath from him to you. Okay, I'm sorry the same thing's happening because I used this past week and it didn't happen. So the same thing is happening again. I'm sorry. Anyhow, so let me just explain this and we'll have to figure out what to do. The strange thing about this saying is that it's not a saying. Samuel the Small is quoting Proverbs. It's not his saying. So why are we saying that Samuel Small would say? He's quoting King Solomon in Proverbs. Do you understand the problem? So, it's like if I were to say, Rafi says Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one. No, that's Moses said that in Deuteronomy. Okay. So why is Samuel the Small quoting King Solomon in Proverbs, and it's in his name? So the translation here is correct when it says he used to say. In other words, the reason why he quotes it, the statements in Pirkei Avot are representative statements. Very often they represent the various scholars that they're talking about. The reason why Samuel was called Samuel the Small was that he was a very humble person. He saw himself as insignificant. And therefore his motto was, when your enemy falls, don't rejoice. There's nothing to rejoice about. Yes, you wanted to overcome your enemy. That's good. Leave the party for another time. So, sometimes you make a party and then you never know which associates that enemy had that made them angry. So sometimes it's better to leave those things. You could argue the point back and forth, but the point is that Samuel the Small, this was his motto. He lived his life this way, and therefore this statement is a statement of his. So again, it is a direct quote from the Psalms, but the idea is that they were looking for a verse which would be representative of this individual whose name was Samuel the Small. So I want to just give that example there. Again, if this turns off, I will just go back into the same link and hopefully we'll be able to continue. I think next week I'll use my Bar Ilan Zoom instead of the Ariel Zoom, and hopefully that will solve the problem, because I used this, I think, what's day? Thursday, just at the beginning of this week. And it was not a problem, so I don't know what happened. Okay, I think there's one more quote here. Rabbi Elazar HaKapar. See this one last one. I hope you have time. Here it is. Rabbi Elazar HaKapor.
Rabbi Elazar HaKapor, here it is. Invidia, pofta trupească și it's written onoarea, but I should say mândria distanțează un om de lume. Because honor, you see, in Romanian, onoarea, it sounds like dignity somehow when you say.
Okay, so what word should I put in instead?
Mândria.
How do you spell that? M-A, like this?
Yes, it's an A with, Mirela written it in the chat.
Which way?
Wrote it in the chat, Mândria.
You wrote it?
Yeah.
Where's?
Yeah, and vanity, of course, vanitatea. Vanitatea, mândria, there are synonyms.
Mandria.
Mandria. It's an I, not an E.
Yes, a mandria.
I, yeah, there is an I.
Okay. So let me go back to it. And again, if this turns off, which probably is going to happen because they just warned us, so I'll just open up the link again. So Elazar Kapar would say, envy, lust, meaning the pursuits of the of material and bodily desires, and the pursuit of fame drive a person from the world. Well, let's just think for a second. Let's talk about envy. Envy, instead of living your life, you're trying to live somebody else's life. So drive a person from the world. In the world, you're supposed to live your life. If you're constantly looking at that person, and why can't I have what they have? Why can't I have what they have? You're not living your life. So it's, without realizing it, it's driving you away from living life. So it's driving you away from the world. Because what is the world? Your life is the world. You don't live in that person's body and that person's mind. You only live in your own. So you can only understand the world from the way you see it. So envy, if I'm constantly looking what everybody's doing, I'm not living my life. So that's why it should be totally unimportant to you, because there are always going to be things that you have that they don't, and things that they have that you don't. But you know what? You might not need that everything that they have. They also might not need everything that they have. but that's their problem. Don't make it yours. So, it's very important for us to learn to live in our own shoes. What about, let's take fame. What is, here's something, click clack. What is fame? Fame means that, one moment. Fame too, it's so important for us that everybody like us and everybody say how great we are. But you know what? That's not going to help you after 120. 120 is a metaphor in Judaism for the length of a human being, because Moses lived to 120, and in Genesis it says that God said that people should now be 120. If you remember that verse at the end of the pericope of Genesis. I remember my father, one time when he was in his later years, we went to the bank and he talks to the guy at the bank. He says, I want to ask you a question of something that happens after my 120. And the guy at the bank says, you're going to be 120? How old are you? He says, no, when I'm after 120. He said he didn't understand what he was talking about. What's this 120? He didn't know it's a metaphor when, when life is over. So, fame, again, if you live for fame, you're not living your life. And by the way, sometimes when you're famous, it destroys your life. Because then people expect things of you which you didn't really want. Well, number one, you have to go with security, with a bodyguard. Number two, if people think you have a lot of wealth, a lot of people are going to want to attack you, or at least get a loan, right? Or a little bit of help. You're going to have all these fake friends who are going to try to be your best friend. You're going to have a real hard time differentiating between the illusions of life and what real is, because everybody's going to try to play tricks on you. I'm just saying that fame has a lot of shortcomings. There's a price that you have to pay for these things. If you look, by the way, on the internet, look up, it's called the 27 Club. The 27 Club is a list of movie stars and rock stars and singers who died at the age of 27. It's called the 27 Club. It's strange, okay? But many, many famous people who died exactly at the age of 27, many times from drugs, but all different things. They call it the 27 Club. So fame has a price. But the point is, it's not that it's good or bad. As long as you live your own life, it's not going to affect you. But if you're living for it, it will affect you. It looks like the class will stop in 2 minutes. Okay, when it stops, we come back. It's like a Bobo doll. You know these Bobo dolls, you hit it? In Hebrew, they call it nachon takon, goes boop, it comes up again. So and next week, I'll try to use the Bar Ilan. The Bar Ilan works a little bit differently, but I hope I'll try to use the Bar Ilan one next week. This one was Ariel University.
Probably they didn't see the subscription.
Yeah, there's probably a problem with the subscription. It was probably not renewed. But I don't understand why this past week it didn't happen. Okay, whatever. So we're about to go. So that was we looked at just a minute ago, and that's what I wanted to say from Pirkei Avot. So we will, as soon as we get signed off, I want to, when we open up again, I would like, oh, you have unlimited Zoom? Who was saying that? Elena? Oh, then maybe next time.
Yes, I have one. If you want to share with you a link right now, I will.